Hi, and welcome to the 6th episode of a new series where we'll be using the new Unity 5 to create a really simple game. In this episode, we'll be learning about controlling character movement through learning about rigid bodies and how the forces of physics will affect them. And lastly, we'll use some C sharpening to allow you to control your character's movement. So let's start with rigid bodies. So there are many ways to control your character movement to make it move up, down, left or right. But in our game, we'll make it appear as natural as possible, and that will be through the laws of physics. So think of a rigid body as something that conforms to the laws of physics. So currently, as you can see here in the Unity 5 game editor, your character is nothing more than just a character that doesn't conform to any rules in terms of the laws of physics. So we need to make it such that it can be affected by physics. So select your player game object, go to add component and choose rigid, or rather type in rigid body 2D. Press enter to add a rigid body 2D component to your player game object. Now when you press the play button, notice that your character just falls right to the bottom of the screen. And that's because you have added a rigid body 2D, which allows it to be affected by gravity. So for our simple game, we want our character to be flying. So let's make sure that it is not affected by gravity. Go to the Inspector tab when you have the player game object selected. Scroll down to where you have added the new rigid body 2D component. And make sure you set gravity scale as 0. Save the scene using Ctrl S or Command S, depending on whether you're on Mac or Windows. And now when you start the game, notice that your character doesn't fall to the bottom of the screen. But how do you actually move your character now? And that is where we go to the forces of physics. So just think about it. How do you move something in real life? You apply a force in a direction. So that is true for a rigid body 2D. So let's do that. So go to Mono Develop and go to the player script, which you have created in the previous episode. So over here in the update method, we will do most of our character control movement here. But before that, make sure you get the rigid body 2D, as it is a new component that you have added to the character. So in the start method over here, make sure you retrieve the rigid body component so that you can use it anywhere else in the player script. And now in the update method, after the portion where we check for if the X key is pressed, now we check if the left key is pressed, left arrow, or the right key is pressed. Key code dot right arrow. Okay. Okay, but before we move on, we need something to store the amount of force, okay, for left and right. So under the rigid body 2D which you have created here, create a new variable called h, which is for horizontal. And above this line, we will capture that amount of horizontal force that you have put into pressing on the left and right arrow key. So h equals to input dot get axis, and we will get the horizontal axis. And now we will apply a force to the rigid body 2D to make it move left or right. So rigid body 2D dot add force times vector 2 dot right times move force, which we have not created yet, but we'll do so now. So below the h, we will create a move force. For now, we'll just give it a random value of 135. Now when you go back to the Unity 5 game editor and start the game, and when you press the left key, your character moves. But notice that it goes out of control, or rather it doesn't stop, and the speed increases exponentially. So to prevent that, we need to give it a max speed which it does not cross over. So go back to mono develop, and before the line where we add the force to push it left or right, we check if it has crossed, or rather went over the max amount of speed. So if h times rigid body 2D dot velocity dot x, which is left or right, is less than max speed, then we add the force. Of course we have not created max speed yet, which is why it changed to red color, telling us that we need to do so. So for now, let's create a max speed of maybe 3. This is up to you. Now that we have defined a max speed, start the game again from the Unity 5 game editor. And now when you press left or right, notice that the character moves left and right, but it does not increases its speed without limit, since you have specified a speed limit for it. Now we need to make it so that you can move your character up and down as well. So go back to mono develop, back to the player script. Copy this portion here for left and right, and paste it, and instead of key code dot left arrow, we'll use key code dot up arrow and key code dot down arrow. And over here, or rather we need to create a new variable to store the amount of vertical force. So besides h, let's create a v, which stands for vertical. And under this line, where it says h equals to input.getAxis horizontal, we'll write a new line which says input.getAxis vertical. Okay, so over here, back in this portion where we just pasted the previous code here, change this h to v and change velocity.x to .y. And lastly, where we add the force, we want to add a force to make it go up or down. So v times vector 2 dot up. Okay, now when you go back to the Unity 5 game editor and start the game, okay, notice that now you can move up or down, or diagonally if you press either up right or down left at the same time. Okay, now notice that even after I have pressed left and stop pressing it, the character is still moving. Okay, so this is due to the inertia that is left over from when you apply a force to push it. So this is up to your preference. If you prefer the character to be in this state, that's fine, but we can take it one step further by making it stop immediately when you have no longer apply any force to it. So go back to mono develop. Okay, and under v, this line where it says v equals to input get axis vertical, okay, we'll create a new boolean which is either true or false, and we'll call it if key press equals to false. So if you have pressed the left or right arrow, okay, we'll say that if key press is true, okay, which is the same for up and down. And now in the bottom here, we'll check to say if you have pressed any keys. So if you have not pressed any keys, okay, we'll make the character stop immediately by setting its velocity to 0. So rigid body 2D here dot velocity equals to vector 2 dot 0, which is just a short form for new vector 2 0 0. Okay. Okay, now when you go back to Unity and start the game, okay, and when you try to move your character around by pressing the up, down, left, right key, notice that when you release your finger from the keys, okay, the character stops immediately. Okay, this might give off a more responsive type of gameplay experience if you want your character to stop immediately or change directions immediately when you have released your finger from your keyboard or your game controller, depending on your preference. So in the next episode, okay, we'll learn about how to add attacking to the character so you can shoot projectiles from your character. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. So to do that, first we have to create a second animation, and then we'll learn about animation parameters, which will